Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24111.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the second hour of Tipp Today. 1800 938 007 if you want to speak to Leanne. It's a free phone number. We'll be speaking about gardening in this hour as well. Ulton will join us. So if you have a gardening query, will you log that with us now, please, on text or WhatsApp. That's 083 311 3311. Now, I'd like to be joined by Deputy Michael Lowry. Good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning, Fran.
And good to talk to you. Happy New Year to you as well, by the way, if it's not too late to say that.
To you and your listeners.
In December, Michael, you announced that multi-million funding for the Garda Training College in Templemore, saying that the investment provides certainty for the college. On this programme on Friday last, Alan Kelly said that while welcoming the investment, he said the government still hasn't ruled out creating a new training facility outside of Templemore. What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, to put this in perspective, Fran, before the last and during the last general election, the future of Templemore Garda Training College came into question, and that arose because of the programme for governments that were put forward. Subsequent to that, we had the election, and then we had negotiations for the formation of a government. I was part of those formation talks and sat in the room with the Fianna Fáil representatives and the Fine Gael representatives. And obviously, during those discussions, I raised the future of Templemore Training College. And arising from that, a commitment was made in the programme for government that the government would continue to support and expand the Garda Training College in Templemore as the main and primary Garda Training College, and that there would be investment in it to develop it and expand it. So that is the commitment in the programme for government. During those wide-ranging discussions that we had on the future of Templemore, so I was satisfied that the future of Templemore was secure. And during those discussions, the case was strongly made that there was a need for a tertiary system that could play a role in the delivery of Garda training. I understood that to be that they were looking at technological institutes that would be able to deliver online courses, and in particular, that as an example, they gave the need for refresher courses for current Gardaí, because the nature of policing is changing rapidly, laws are changing, the numbers of the force that need to be educated is increasing, particularly educated on new initiatives and new developments. So effectively then this committee has been established under the chairmanship of the former General Secretary of the Department of Further and Higher Education, Jim Breslin. He's chairing that group. A programme of work is being developed at the moment by the Secretariat to the group from the Department of Justice, and membership of that group is being finalised. Now, they have to come up with plans for, the expansion and development of Templemore, for the recruitment of 5,000 Gardaí. They have to look at where the investment is required in terms of the Garda requirements. And there was follow-on from that then was that we recently had the national framework announced and then the budget announced for each department. So this government has provided the Department of Justice with the biggest budget in its history, the biggest investment it has ever had in technology, in transport, in equipment and in updated facilities and modernising buildings. So there's a huge investment there, and I'm satisfied that Templemore and the training college in Templemore is secure into the future. The training college in Templemore is obviously the heartbeat, is the lifeblood of Templemore, and is central to the economic activity in the town. And I'm very firmly committed to supporting its future. And I also have to say and recognise that both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, with myself, are also determined that Templemore will remain as it is.
Yeah, and part of that working group that you made reference to there, Michael, that's about to be established, and I think a report possibly in July, is part of their job not to look at the case of a second college?
Well, when they say a second college, they're looking at. I spoke with the Minister for Justice yesterday, and first of all, let me say that this group is established. And that group has to report back to the minister and to the government, and ultimately any decisions will be taken by government. But my understanding of it is that they'll be looking at technical institutes to see how they can play a role in online courses and training or retraining or updating existing members of the force on changes to law and changes to procedures and practices. So I'm not concerned that the influence and role of Templemore is going to be diluted in any way.
Right, and would that be a red line issue for you if there was any notion of a second college, as opposed to just maybe modules or the like?
No, I would listen, Fran, it became an issue in the formation talks. But I'm absolutely satisfied that partners in government, I'm part of the regional and independent group. I had a particular interest in Templemore, and I put it on the agenda. And if you read the programme for government, there's a very specific commitment to develop and expand Templemore, and that Templemore will remain the primary and training centre for all recruitment now and into the future. And I'm satisfied that both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are committed to that in government. And obviously I will be overseeing that. I will have an input into that, and I will be safeguarding and protecting the best interests of Templemore Garda Training College. And I have to say that I'm not getting any sense from anybody in any of the other political parties. The only one that has raised this as a particular issue is Alan Kelly. Now, the last time Alan made a furore about Templemore was when he enthusiastically called for the Garda College to be brought before the Public Accounts Committee. And that process, a short number of years ago, did a lot of damage to the college and undermined the college management. And if you recall, he was on your programme on numerous occasions, and there was a big number of inquiries, and the inquiry found that there was breaches of financial standards in public office legislation, that monies were misappropriated into various internal accounts. But the important thing was that there was no embezzlement, as was suggested at the time. There was no fraud, as was suggested at the time. And there was no Garda benefited financially. And there was no charges after the Office of Public, there was no charges after the DPP reviewed the report of the inquiry. And the only thing that really happened on the ground was that a number of local businesses lost contracts to supply goods and services to the college. And happily, those suppliers have been restored. We worked hard over the last number of years to ensure that that was rectified. And thankfully, we now have a situation where, for instance, milk, which was supplied for years for Monaghan dairies, is now being supplied by Turles Co-op, and there are 4 other local suppliers were successful in having their contracts renewed. So Templemore has always been at the top of my agenda. I understand the influence, the importance of it, not just to Templemore town, but to the whole of the region. For instance, when there's a passing out parade in Templemore, which is a regular occurrence nowadays, you have Turles is busy with restaurants, shops, or what have you, right across into Cashel, Nina. The whole Tipperary benefits from it. So it's a major part of infrastructure, and I am totally committed, and the government are committed to maintaining it, to maintaining its status, to develop it. I'm also can say to you, Fran, this morning that there's a lot happening. There's a lot of work going on at the moment. There's a lot of engagement between the college authorities, between the Garda authorities, the Department of Justice and the Office of Public Works. We're looking at several ways to alleviate the congestion that's there. For example, there's huge issues in relation to car parking. There's huge issues in relation to capacity. So the idea is that a number of suggestions have been put forward. A number of practical proposals are on the table. A number of properties in the outlying areas are being looked at. And every effort is going to be made now to develop and expand the college as quickly as possible, because the reality is we have to do it, because money is provided to recruit at least 5,000 new Garda recruits. And additional Garda staff over the next 5 years. So they all have to be trained and catered for, and we obviously intend and need to do that in Templemore.
Can I ask you about Mercosur as well? As you know, thousands of people attended that protest in Athlone on Saturday, last week on Saturday. On Friday, the European Union states approved the agreement. Ireland voted against eventually. The next stage, of course, the European Parliament vote, Michael. But how much influence came on the government from your independence? Because it's kind of clear that Micheál Martin changed his mind in recent weeks.
Well, from the outset of the formation of government, together with my regional and independent colleagues, we've been very strong in our opposition to the Mercosur trade deal, and we insisted on it being included in our opposition to Mercosur being included in the programme for government. And on your programme, on several statements that I issued, and when I spoke in the Dáil before Christmas, I consistently stated that Mercosur was a bad deal for the beef industry and would have negative impacts on the industry, which is vital obviously for our economy. And it would also, and I was very conscious of this because no one actually mentioned it, it would also have an impact on our meat processing factories. And we have them in Nina, we have them in Cahir, we have them in Roscrea, and there's thousands of people employed in those factories. So our regional independent group, we had a sequence of meetings over a number of months. And during those meetings, we communicated to the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach our strong view that the government should vote against Mercosur and its implications. I was also in regular contact with the president of the IFA, with other farming organisations, and I was briefed extensively by the beef processing industry. And I was pleased that our determination and the willingness of our colleagues in government, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, led to a situation where a decision was taken by the government to vote against this trade deal. So it was a government decision. It was in the programme for government. We followed the programme for government. There's no point in having a programme for government like I've just discussed there with Templemore. I had that included in the programme for government, and the programme for government is the Bible for going forward.
But I'm sure you heard Micheál Martin speak from China though, and it did seem that he hadn't made up his mind at that point.
Well, look, I say as well, Fran, that we have to recognise that we also there was two key issues, and I spoke at an IFA gathering in Kilkenny before this came, and I said the two critical issues for farmers in this current year were, first of all, the nitrates directive. And the government and Martin Hayden, the Minister for Agriculture, and together with the government, negotiated a nitrates directive, a 3-year derogation. And that was hugely important, and it was a lifeline for the dairy farmers. Now, at that particular time, I spoke in the Dáil, and I was addressing the Taoiseach, and the Taoiseach was answering my questions, and I said to him that there could be no question of a trade-off between the nitrates directive and the Mercosur deal. And that was our position, and we maintained that position right through.
But that derogation deal, that's for 3 years, and because we're not the good boys of Europe on this now, Michael, will that not be looked at negatively going forward, do you think?
Well, look, first of all, the nitrates directive is now agreed, so that's not going to be revisited.
But only for 3 years, isn't it?
Only for 3 years, yeah. But 3 years is was reckoned by all the organisations, farmers organisations, was a breathing space that was required. That was the time. Initially, there was 18 months proposed, and it was extended to 3 years. So that was effectively a very good deal. But we'd always been clear that European Union and trade agreements, that they must, while trade agreements are important, they must defend the most vulnerable sectors. And in this case, our farmers' livelihoods could not be undermined through weak or ineffective environmental standards in all the South American countries, and that's effectively what was going to happen.
And the opposing argument then, I'd love your view on that, because the bigger picture is that if this deal goes through, and it looks like it probably will, in fact, we're promised gains in, I don't know, dairy, pharmaceutical, machinery, manufacturing, drinks, all of these other opportunities outside of beef.
Yes, well, beef is a hugely important part of our economy, and obviously the backbone of beef and dairy are the backbone of our agricultural industry. We are, a rural, predominantly based community, and we depend on agriculture and the agri-sector for the support, particularly in rural communities, for financial support. So they're very important, and it was very important that we stood up for farmers. It's very important that we recognise the contribution that the agricultural industry is making to our economy, and this agreement would have negative effects. Now, in fairness to France and Italy, through their negotiations, they have managed to put in pretty strong safeguards. So I think by Ireland holding out, we have got safeguards that will protect Ireland to a certain extent. Obviously now it goes to the members of Parliament. They have to vote on it. As you said there at the outset, I think it's unlikely that they will overturn the decision of the Council. But we just have to get on with it now and make the best of it, and ensure that the protections that are in place and the safeguards that are in place will be observed, that they will be managed, that they will be supervised. And then we look at the other sectors where we can take advantage of the deal that's on offer.
Can I ask you about what's happening with An Post? Because I know the postmasters across the county expressed concerns to you about the viability of the whole network. Now we're hearing about some support, at least, for the post offices. What's the latest on that?
Well, yeah, the latest on that is yesterday the Cabinet agreed a 15 million investment in An Post, 15 million per annum. And the government is clearly committed to sustaining An Post and the post office network, because it's a key component of the economy and the social infrastructure throughout the country. Up to this year, an amount of 10 million annum was provided. Between 2023 and 2025. There was a fixed term agreement of 10 million. That has been increased now to 10 million per annum. And An Post will disperse that funding across the post office network, with all the contractor post offices benefiting from it. So, that funding is there to support and sustain our national network, in line with the commitment again for the programme for government. And I don't have to tell you, Fran, you've had several people on. Post offices are at the heart of our towns and villages across Tipperary and the country, and they do provide essential services. They provide social connection, and they provide local employment. So this additional investment recognises the importance of maintaining the network at a sufficient scale, ensuring continued access to services of real social value, especially for older people and those that are living in rural communities. So that government decision yesterday morning of the additional 15 million reassures postmasters that post offices remain and will remain a priority for the government during the lifetime of this government. And we also saw yesterday where we had a huge increase in the price of a stamp, and that put sharply into focus the problems that An Post are facing, because what you have is right across Europe now, you're seeing that the volumes that are being posted are down by 10 to 15%. The same is happening with inbound deliveries, and the costs are increasing. Now, the real kernel here is that An Post, they have a universal service obligation, which means that it must give a mail service to every household in the country on every working day. So irrespective of the volume of mail that they have to provide the service. And in providing that service for a small quantity of mail and a decreasing quantity of mail, people are, increasingly, because of the advances in technology, are not using the mail system. So I think we're going to have to look at that from a national perspective.
But the parcel aspect of their business is going through the roof, Michael.
It is. And An Post have to be complimented, because on Post, I recall probably 15 years ago, they weren't involved in that business. They became involved in it because they're now a commercial state organisation. They became involved. They've expanded their network. They've expanded their delivery service. They're doing exceptionally well in regard to that. They're also involved in the banking and financial sector. So On Post has a good future, but it does need support and it needs time to restructure itself properly and to take advantages of the opportunities that are there. And that's why the government have given them this 15 million every year now to ensure that they're stabilised and that they can work their way forward as a commercial entity.
Can I ask you to jog your memory for me? Because on yesterday's programme we spoke to Eddie Bulfin, who I'm sure you know, and we discussed the closure of Thurles Sugar Factory in 1989. But I was looking through some of the Dáil records, and you made many contributions over those years from about 86 up to 89. When you look back at that and the loss of the sugar factory, what are your thoughts, Michael?
Well, actually, I hadn't, but now that you've asked me, I suppose my instant reaction would be one of sadness. It was a traumatic experience for everyone that was involved. We used to refer to Thurles Sugar Factory as the factory. Once you said the factory, you knew immediately where it was. And like when you talk about Eddie and his colleagues, there were so many families from Thurles area engaged with the factory, a livelihood out of the factory, so many families raised from the rewards of the factory, so many farming families dependent on it as a crop, and so many small farmers dependent on it for part-time work. The factory was, it was phenomenally successful. It was a great shame that it was ever closed. It was one of the political conundrums that I could never really resolve as to why the government took the decision to close the factory.
And Fianna Fáil were in power. We had two ministers, didn't we, in North Tipperary at that point?
We had two ministers at that time, and I think that was the debate. But when you talk about the politics of it, the politics I could never figure out, in the sense that I don't want to be critical, but look, obviously an ultimatum was given from the then Taoiseach, Charlie Haughey. The ministers didn't stand up to him. He got his way. He effectively determined that the factory would close in consultation with the Irish Sugar at the time. And it was a baffling decision, to say the least of it. But the incredible thing about it, like the factory closed, I think we had a general election, Fran, approximately a year later, and the Fianna Fáil vote in the constituency went up. That was one of my memories of it. I said, how could that happen? But it actually did happen. But look, the factory itself was a massive loss to the economy. I mean, it was the central part of the economy. Obviously, it was labour intensive, so you had a big employment content there. And as I said, the benefits and the fruits of the activities in the factory spread right across the community, particularly into the agricultural sector, and particularly into, all the shops closed. The amount of money that was in circulation at that time from the factory was incredible. And the amount of, we had so many talented people working in the factory, people with skill levels that were extraordinary. And in fairness, a lot of those skill levels have been passed on to another generation, and some of them are still actually actively involved in our community and in groups around the county. So it was a great loss. It was a great shame. It was a great pity that it happened. Obviously, there were different times. I didn't realise it was that length ago, but it is, what you said, 36 years ago?
Yeah, 36 years ago, yeah. And of course, the discussion on it started about 86, and then, of course, in 89, there was the closure. But just for your own information, when we brought it up, the amount of people that made contact with us and all sharing memories of the campaign and all of that sort of thing as well.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yes,
Michael,
the campaign was, I mean, that's what I said, like, when the campaign started, people came from all parts of the county on bicycles and cars and what have you. They worked the long shifts. They were paid handsomely. They spent their money in the local areas. It was the sugar factory in Thurles was more just than a factory. It was the work environment was excellent. There was a great collegiality there. Great friends were made. and Eddie, I'm sure, filled you in and all that. He would have been part and parcel of the whole thing at the time.
Michael, thanks for your time this morning. Thank you. Good morning to you. It's Deputy Michael Lowry speaking to us there. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.